You know, mister, I don't talk much, but I can cook. That was all she said, a slip of a girl standing at the edge of my porch, clutching a cast-iron pot like it was the only thing keeping her alive. The sky in New Mexico burns red in late summer, the kind of red that stains your memory. I was fixing the barn door when I heard her knock. Not bold, just enough to be heard. She looked about 19, maybe 20, skinny as a rail, her boots nearly worn through, shawl hanging off her shoulders like spiderwebs. She didn't smile, didn't flinch, just stood there, eyes steady, voice cracked from miles of dust and hunger. I stared at her longer than I should have. Her lips chapped, hands blistered, clutching that pot like it was the last piece of home. Name? I asked, because sometimes that's all a man can offer. Al, she whispered. Like saying it too loud might break the spell. No wagon, no mule, just her shadow, and the setting sun. I wanted to ask more, but I didn't. Instead, I stepped aside and nodded. You're hired. And you're home. She barely breathed as she crossed the threshold, like someone laying down a burden too heavy for words. I didn't touch her, didn't even try to smile. Water in the basin. Tomorrow we talk chores. Tonight you eat. She nodded, disappeared down the hall, and I stood alone as the last light faded over the fields. For the first time in years. I didn't lock the door behind me. Later, I watched her move around the kitchen like she was afraid to wake the ghosts. Her hands trembled, but she worked with purpose, boiling water, cleaning the counters, coaxing life back into a kitchen long since gone cold. She didn't ask about the old photograph tucked on the shelf, didn't mention the tin of herbs unopened on the windowsill. Just worked, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back with a bit of rag. That night, she made eggs and cornbread. Nothing fancy, but the smell. Lord, I'd forgotten how a house could smell like home. I sat at the table, hands folded, trying not to show how hungry I was for something more than food. She slid a bowl in front of me, voice barely above a whisper. Just a farm meal. She worked too hard, maybe afraid we'd ask her to leave if she slowed down. I'd catch her out by the fence, hanging wet linens, wind tugging at her hair. Face set like someone bracing for the next storm. She had her secrets, too. Nights she'd sit by the window, just watching, her eyes far away. One night, after a supper of roasted turnips and stew, she told me her mother used to burn biscuits on purpose, just to hear her father laugh. She smiled at the memory, her laughter small and surprised, like it hadn't been used in a long time. I laughed, too. First time in years, I think. The quiet after felt good. But nothing in this land stays peaceful for long. One afternoon, a man showed up at the side gate. Tall, mean smile, eyes like a snake. His name was Silas. I didn't need to ask who he was to her. The way her face went white told me plenty. He leaned in, voice all sugar and poison, talking about old times. Funny you never said goodbye when you left, he drawled. I stepped out of the barn just as he was getting close, my boots loud on the porch. I didn't shout, didn't threaten, just walked up beside her and put my hand on her shoulder, firm and steady. She works here. She belongs here. Silas's charm dropped, and he muttered something about just passing through before he disappeared into the dust. Ellie's voice shook as she thanked me. You don't owe me thanks, I said. A good cook deserves a safe kitchen. But she knew, and I knew, it was about more than that. After that, something changed. I started fixing things, the dining table, the porch rail, little things I'd let rot for too long. I carved her a new rolling pin, left it on the shelf without a word. She started singing more, low and sweet, when she thought I couldn't hear. A week passed. Then another. Spring crept in, wildflowers pushing up through the cracks. The kitchen was alive again, bread rising, coffee brewing before sunrise, the smell of wild sage and honey. One morning, I left a bundle of flowers on the table, just to see her smile. She didn't say much, but I caught her humming that tune all day. Then, just as it all felt right, the world tilted again. The mayor's wife came by, tried Ellie's peach cobbler, and offered her a real kitchen in town. A shop of her own, a sign with her name, a chance she'd never had before. She told me over supper. Voice careful. I was thinking I might go. Town's got a kitchen with my name on it. I nodded, told her she should, if that's what she wanted. I tried to mean it. That night, I sat on the porch, bread untouched beside me, feeling the cold settle in. Next morning, just as the sun hit the ridge, I heard footsteps behind me in the barn. Ellie stood there, apron dusted with flour, pulled out a silver ring I'd kept wrapped for years, placed it in her hand. Nothing fancy, just solid and sure. Then you're not just hired. You're home. She blinked away tears, smiled so shy I almost missed it. Hope you like biscuits every day, she whispered. As long as they come with you, I said, my voice rough with something I couldn't name. That's how love comes out here. Not in words, not in promises, just in coffee shared at sunrise, in fences mended, in the hush between two people who've carried too much for too long. Sometimes, home is the only vow you ever need. So tell me, after all that, where does your heart land? Would you have stayed, or chased the chance of a new name in a new town? Does justice mean the past left behind? Or is it finding someone who stands beside you when the dust kicks up? Leave a comment, share your story, or just sit a while and listen. Out here. Other days, a single shadow by the fence post could send the old ghosts rushing back in. It was the spring after Ellie decided to stay. She'd settled into her routines, kneading bread before dawn, fixing soup from whatever she found in the garden, her hands moving like they were telling old stories. Owen had changed, too. He talked a little more. Sometimes let himself linger at the door just to listen to her humming, the walls in him coming down, bit by bit. But that's when the trouble started. It always does, right when you think you've outrun your past. One morning, just after the dew had burned off, a rider came up the road, tall, hard-looking. The kind of man who rides slow because he's not afraid of anything he might find. He wore a star on his vest, not shiny, just scuffed from years of use. Deputy Marshal Tom Dillard. I recognized him from the cattle auction, where he'd once broken up a fight with nothing but his stare. He dismounted slow, tipped his hat to Owen, but his eyes found Ellie right away. Ma'am, he said, all polite, but there was a weight behind it. Need to ask you a few questions. Ellie stiffened, fingers curling around the handle of her pot out of old habit. Owen moved to her side. I didn't take nothing but what was mine. The bruises I left with weren't silver, Marshal. Dillard studied her. I don't care about family feuds or hard feelings. But I gotta bring you in for questioning. That's my job. Owen stepped forward, voice low. She's done nothing wrong. You want to search this place? Go ahead. Then, he swung up into the saddle and rode off, dust trailing behind like a bad omen. That evening, Ellie didn't say a word through supper. She scrubbed the pots harder than usual. When he finally reached for her hand, she pulled away, not angry, just tired. After he'd gone to bed, Ellie sat by the cold stove, twisting her mother's old ring around her finger. The memories kept flooding in. The landlord with his greedy hands, the rumors that followed her from town to town, the way even kindness always came with a price. Maybe this place wasn't really hers. Maybe nowhere was. At midnight, a sound jolted her, not the wind, but footsteps on gravel. She peered out, saw a shadow moving near the chicken coop. Heart pounding. She grabbed the old shotgun Owen kept by the door, crept outside. In the moonlight, she saw a figure hunched by the gate. Not the marshal, not a thief, but a kid, barely 12, ragged coat. Wild eyes. He froze when she raised the gun. Don't shoot, ma'am. I just wanted a bit of bread. Ellie's fear melted to anger, then pity. She lowered the gun. You hungry? The boy nodded, eyes wide. What's your name? Sammy, he whispered. Been walking 2 days. My pa's gone. Ma's sick. His story tumbled out. Words half sob, half hope. Ellie recognized the hunger in him. It was her own story, years ago. She brought him inside, gave him the last of the cornbread, poured warm milk in a cup. Owen woke to voices and found them at the table, Sammy wolfing down the crumbs, Ellie's hand on his back. The sight made something soften in Owen's eyes. You can stay the night, he said. Gruff but gentle. We'll figure things out come morning. And just like that, the ranch had another soul to care for. By dawn, the marshal returned, this time with a second man and the warrant. Owen met him at the gate, arms crossed, ready for a fight. But inside, things took a turn no one expected. As Dillard entered the kitchen, he froze, staring at the boy. Sammy. His voice broke, softer than before. The kid looked up, fear turning to recognition. Uncle Tom. Turns out, the marshal's own nephew had run away, missing for days. The story unraveled. Sammy's father, a drunk, had hit the road, the mother too sick to stop him. Sammy tried to find his uncle, landed here instead. The marshal's face shifted from suspicion to relief. His mission forgotten in the mess of family and circumstance. He looked at Ellie, regret flickering in his eyes. "Seems you've done more good than most," he said. "Maybe the world's too small for second chances, but I figure you earned one." He tore up the warrant, told Sammy he could stay if he wished, at least until his mother was well. "I owe you," the marshal said quietly to Ellie, before riding away, shoulders heavier than when he'd arrived. The days that followed were some of the hardest and the happiest. Ellie taught Sammy how to gather eggs, knead dough, wash up without breaking a plate. Owen took him out to mend fences, showed him how to check for snakes in the barn. The new shape of their little family was what he'd really wanted. One night, as the fire died low, she found Owen on the porch, hat in hand, eyes on the horizon. "You ever think about what we're doing?" he asked. "Taking in strays, fixing broken things. What if it all falls apart again?" Ellie sat beside him, silence stretched between them. "If it does, it does. At least we tried. That's more than most can say." Owen nodded, but she could feel the fear in him, the fear of losing again. Sammy's mother got well enough to write a letter. After he was gone, the house felt quieter, but not empty. Something had shifted, a little hope, a little grief, tangled up like roots. One morning, Owen found her staring at the letter, torn between the ache of old dreams and the comfort of new ones. "What will you do?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. She looked at him, at the fields, at the kitchen window glowing gold with sunrise. "Maybe you can't ever outrun the past, Owen. But maybe you can choose which future's worth fighting for." He stepped closer, touched her hand, his voice trembling. "Just don't go because you're scared to stay." Ellie smiled, tears blurring the morning light. "I'm not scared anymore," she said. That night, they sat side by side, watching a storm roll in over the hills, lightning painting wild shapes across the sky. No promises, no vows, just a quiet knowing that whatever happened next, they'd face it together, even if the world kept throwing tests their way. So what would you have done if you were Ellie? Chose the safe road back to town, a life with your own name on the door? Or risked it all on a battered ranch? A man who speaks more in actions than words, a kind of love that's hard-won and messy as real life? Drop your answer below, because out here, everyone's got their own idea of home, and sometimes the bravest thing is choosing to stay.